Good evening, everyone. It is 6:47 and I call this meeting to order. Present tonight, we have Director Nimmo, Director Kuhlenberg, Director Ramirez, and myself, Director DeFreitas, which means we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreter, Astrid. Would you please share the instructions with our participants, and then we can turn on the interpretation function. Thanks. The first business in order this evening is the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Then our next agenda item is the opening celebrations and updates by our superintendent, Dr. Anna Cole.
Good evening. It's fun to have folks here tonight. This week, all eyes are on the class of 2026, who's graduating on Friday and Saturday. So just want to lift up, there's all kinds of celebrations that we'll be having for the class of 2026. They started weeks ago. They're continuing. At each ceremony, kids will be celebrated for all their amazing achievements. We know behind every amazing senior is an entire community of folks who have supported students to make it to this point. But I want to lift up a couple of things to celebrate that folks should look for in our graduation ceremonies that have a direct tie to the Board of Education and some of the policies that we've adopted. Overall, we have 437 students graduating this coming weekend. They are heading out to colleges across the country and the globe. Some are going to military service. Some are going direct to workforce. Some are going to take some time away from school. 66 of our students will be awarded the Seal of Biliteracy, which was formally adopted by Roaring Fork Schools in 2017. We were one of the very first school districts in Colorado to implement this policy to celebrate the linguistic and cultural diversity of the Roaring Fork Valley. Students typically it typically takes them all 4 of their high school years to work towards achieving the Seal of Biliteracy. They must prove rigorous proficiency in all 4 language domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, by completing overall language assessments or using high scores earned on advanced placement language exams. The students will be recognizable at graduation with their black and white cords, and want to thank faculty Grisel Martinez, Kate Snyder, Britt DeFord, Amanda Martinez, and Maria Beckington, who helped really manage these programs at all of our high schools and supported this exceptional group of students. So look for that crew if you're at graduation Friday or Saturday. Additionally, this year, new to the Roaring Fork Schools, will have 7 seniors who will receive the State of Colorado's Seal of Climate Literacy, which is a diploma endorsement designed to recognize high school students who demonstrate a strong understanding of climate science and actively engage in addressing climate challenges within their communities. So this is new to the Roaring Fork Schools this year. It serves as a formal acknowledgement on a student's diploma, indicating their proficiency in climate literacy, their commitment to sustainability. Industries, as the board and community are aware, require a workforce that's ready to tackle new challenges in energy, agriculture, forestry, outdoor recreation, and other sectors. And the seal aims to prepare students for the green workforce by equipping them with critical thinking, problem solving, and systems thinking skills relevant to climate issues. To earn the Seal of Climate Literacy, students must complete at least 20 credits of approved coursework covering climate literacy topics. In addition, they must complete a project-based learning experience that demonstrates their understanding of climate change and their ability to apply that knowledge in a real-world context. These experiential projects can take many forms, allowing students to explore their interests and passions. Projects must be school-approved and align with the SEAL's learning objectives. Really want to celebrate Brent Hayes at Basalt High School, Rachel Cooper, Justin Silcox at Roaring Fork High School, and Diana Berge at Glenwood Springs High School, and the ACES team, instructional facilitator Kristen Zodro, who worked throughout last summer to develop Roaring Fork School District's foundational framework for the SEAL, and then to recruit and support students who are working through the program requirements this year. There's 7 students to look for at our high schools during graduation. They will have these really cool kind of medallions that they'll be part of their regalia. So keep an eye out for that crew. Also, 2 other celebrations. As the board is aware, we're going to have a lot of time tonight to talk budget. And as our board is also aware, we only have one more meeting. So we've moved up our timeline for budget approval 2 weeks from the previous year. And the finance team pushed to move that timeline ahead to make sure that the board and community could approve this while we were still kind of in school, in session and working actively. This was a challenging year, especially with timelines because of the state legislative uncertainty relating to school finance and the timing of approval of the School Finance Act. Providing an additional 2 weeks for the board and constituents to review the district's finances strengthens transparency and thoughtfulness regarding the direction of the organization for the next year. So thank you to Laura Quinlivan, to the finance team, to Chief Chicoine, who we'll be hearing from later, for their dedication and commitment to a timely preparation of the budget. It's been a big push, and I know you all are feeling it as well. And finally, I want to share gratitude for the dedication, service, care, and leadership of Dr. Stacy M. Park. Tonight is Dr. Park's final presentation to the Board of Education. I want to appreciate her professionalism and commitment to Roaring Fork School District over the last 4 years. Dr. Park's positive impact on our schools has been significant. For one small example, when she arrived, 55% of Roaring Fork schools earned the highest rating on the state's academic performance framework. This year, 88% of our schools did. As the board will hear tonight in her presentations and in our year 2 strategic plan update in June, we are building momentum around our strategic goals, working towards eliminating the achievement gap between student subgroups and elevating academic outcomes for all. Dr. Park has been an instrumental piece of the development of our strategic plan, the initial implementation these first 2 years. The data dashboard would never have happened without her vision and her ability to build systems to make sure we have the data we need to look at to track this plan. These are just small examples of how Dr. Park has strengthened our data-driven culture, prioritization of instructional quality and student engagement, and built systems and structures to recruit and retain excellent school leaders. We are a much better district because of her leadership, and we will miss her. We wish her the best as she transitions over to the leadership team in Denver Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next business in order, is the superintendent report, which will include 2 presentations. Dr. Park will be providing an update on the 2026 Family Survey and TLCC survey, and Dr. Cole will be discussing the district's equity impact statement, after which each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions.
Thank you. We have our family survey that we completed this spring. Thank you, Dr. Cole, for the kind words. I won't go actually slide by slide, but I think it is worth just giving a quick overview of what the family survey is, especially for anyone who's not familiar with it. And then there are headlines of the results here. Basically why we give the family surveys to make sure that we are getting information from our parents and guardians about their experience and the experience of their children in Roaring Fork schools. And we really want to see how families are, their perception of our programs, our progress, and how well or how far we are from fulfilling our commitments to them. And so a couple of big reasons we do, these are just an illustration of our commitments here, and this was established a while ago, just in the iteration of this survey. It's been a consistent survey to give every year. And so in terms of our district commitments and our school commitments, we do administer a survey on the district and a survey on each of the schools in which families have students. And so here's our response rates since 2023. You can see we had a lower response rate this year than last year and for actually the last couple of years for the district, but we had a higher completion rate for the school. We've discussed a bit about this, the family liaisons. I do want to highlight and celebrate because they do a ton of work to make sure that the surveys are completed. They do a lot of follow-up. We send out reminder emails, and a lot of our families are eager to provide feedback on their child's school. And we found that they have a lot of information about their child's school and may have less information or context about district questions. And so just some information on the right, families are able to complete the surveys in English or Spanish. There's the surveys themselves do reflect the parent and guardians surveyed, not just a household. And the demographics are based on the student's demographic because we don't collect information about the parents' demographics. Here's the response rate disaggregated by race. So you see that here. And this is for the district, and you can see the response rate by schools as well. And in terms of how we use the results, we do review the results with leaders, and we did that in May for both the school and the district. And they had time with their schools to debrief and actually review and think about how it would inform their next steps. Just a couple of highlights here. I won't stop at each slide, but you can see we had a slight improvement over time on the overall district survey. You can see from the disaggregated results here in terms of the experience specifically on the district survey. Celebration is just the climate and the results favorable reference families who selected agree or strongly agree. If it's neutral, then it falls into, it does not fall into the positive perception category. So that's what's informing the percentage there. So we had an increase 1% just overall in climate. You can see the individual questions that are listed here. There's a lot of these types of slides, but what you'll see in each of these cycles is that for the most part, actually, we're at the highest levels we've been in a long time for most of them, even if it's just by a couple points. So, engagement communication is one key part. This is on resources, and that's stayed pretty flat over time. Little increase since last year. This is just, again, about access to tools. We want to make sure that there's awareness and that every family knows where resources are and supports that exist. And so overall, as a district, our favorable perception increased from last year. And there's the highest rating in terms of resources with 84% favorable, and then being welcomed by staff. This is something that we had intentionally identified as a key priority, making sure that we're creating a welcoming environment. And then family communication was a big piece as well, and their strong year-over-year growth. A couple areas for improvement as relates to the district is, again, even the family engagement communication has improved. It's still the lowest rated topic at 70% favorable. I mentioned this before. There were a lot of I don't know responses from families around the district survey. It's just an indication we can be even more communicative about what we're working on, what we're doing. And then the access to mental health services was still a top family priority there. You'll see a connection actually in the TLCC too. This is for schools. Schools primarily in each of the survey topics did increase over time. And you can see the disaggregated results here between Hispanic and Latino families and the white and Caucasian families with a favorable perception. This is a celebration. We had made a concerted effort to make sure that we're setting and communicating high expectations for effort, learning, and achievement. So you can see the steady increase over time, and 92% is the highest favorable rating that we've had since starting the survey in 2019. And so here are the questions that relate to it. Here again in the family communication, and this is for schools, 82% positive perception here. And generally, again, at the schools, families are feeling welcome and invited. There is an opportunity for growth in how we are meaningfully engaging families and bringing in family voice in school decisions. We always want to have people join the school accountability committee. So that's something that I know schools are very intentionally, so I'm putting a plug. If you want to join school accountability committees, the schools would welcome you. Again, just in the theme of learning, the learning opportunities are 81% favorable. So that had a moderate increase from last year of 2 points. And they're meaningful learning opportunities. And again, I think this is always an opportunity to expand access, enrichment, and challenge for students. Safe and caring environment did go down by 1 point in the schools survey. Generally, I think families are saying that they believe our schools can create a safe and welcoming environment, but strengthening again here the belonging, connection, and student voice. Similarly to incorporating family voice meaningfully in our work, we want to make sure that we do that with students as well. And then supporting and challenging every student had 82% positive perception. There's a strong support for students. Pretty universally, families said that at their school, their child gets the support that they need. But we do want to make sure we're keeping an eye on the access to social emotional supports for students as we continue to grapple with ever-evolving challenges as it relates to that. And then finally, talent development, 84% positive here. This really relates to the questions or in the confidence that families have in the school leaders and the educators at the school. This is again, a category where there was a lot of, I don't know, in terms of, how broadly, does a school do this? I think families can respond about their child's teacher, but not really about generally the teachers and all the teachers in the school. So we have some strong performance across all the survey topics. Again, the academic expectations at the highest overall rating, communication and families is strong year-over-year growth. And then confidence in student safety remains pretty high at 91% favorable. The learning opportunities, though it has increased, is still lowest comparably at 81%. Talked about social emotional support and then personalized challenge and future readiness. This is something as we think about our big goals, especially in our high schools, about post-secondary workforce readiness and aligning opportunities with the individual career and academic plan. This is an opportunity to get even more clear on that. So in terms of next steps, school leaders have debriefed these results with their staffs and used information to inform their priorities and action steps for the upcoming year. Do you want to pause here and ask questions, or are we doing the next one? Yeah. Do it all. Okay, great. I'll keep going. So we have the Teaching and Learning Conditions Colorado, and this is a survey that's administered every 2 years by the state of Colorado. It's a partnership among a lot of different entities, but it is an effort to make sure that we're amplifying educator voice here, inform school improvement, and also research and policy. This is a survey that we give on the even numbered years, and so 2026, it's administered in the spring, and on odd numbered years, we actually do our internal staff survey, both through Panorama, but this one is statewide. The survey window this year was the third week of January through the third week of February. And we had 66.4% participation. One thing that's interesting here is that it's a lower participation rate than in 2024. But one thing that we did do is clean up some of our HR coding. So that's why the denominator is actually 633, where before it was probably around 575. We did not hire a bunch more staff. We just actually correctly coded them. And so the actual N of respondents was pretty similar to last year, but the denominator was greater. We also had a new section for the TLCC this year, which was on artificial intelligence, educator use readiness, and the district AI support. So that was new. In this survey, we have all of our educators, school leaders, special service providers, and education support professionals, which includes paraprofessionals, teaching assistants. District staff do not participate in this because this is specifically about this teaching and learning conditions at the schools. We have a lot of reporting domains. You can see them here, and which groups would respond to them. These next 3 slides actually show the comparison across the state of Colorado in that middle column, and then the change since 2024, specifically for Roaring Fork schools. So you can see a lot of, just as a whole, as a district, you can see an increase over most categories, with decline in school leader evaluation of 9 points. Every other category has an increase if this category was on the 2024 administration. Where there is a blank, it's because it's a new category this year. Sorry, for the stretched out slide here. Time was actually a big celebration, even though time has a 68% positive perception, and that's historically been one of the lowest rated. And this is about how much time do I have to complete my work? Is my time used wisely? 8-point increase is pretty significant. And so I just want to celebrate that. And then the use of artificial intelligence here are 3 new categories that were asked. This is not surprising in terms of the difference between other Colorado districts. Last year, what we worked on was a sort of general safe AI use, but we had not made a lot of forward progress yet on support, PD, things like that for AI use in the work and also with students. But that is something that we are working on for this upcoming year. Generally, we do exceed state averages, as you saw here. Big celebration was 90% positive perception for district support for leaders, well-being, professional climate, shared responsibility, and staff leadership. Staff evaluation had a big improvement, and that matters because we're very intentional to actually cross-reference everything, make sure there's very clear and explicit alignment between the work we're doing, the coaching we're doing, the instructional model, and the teacher effectiveness rubric. And so it's good to see that there's more clarity, and we spend a lot of time and energy on making sure our instructional coaching was solid and that we're developing leaders on that. And so that's a celebration as well. We see over the past 3 administrations, student behavior has steady improvement between 76% 2022 to 84% in 2026. And like I said, the lowest rated categories were all related to AI use and policies. We shared these results with our leaders, and there's a question in there actually that asks in which of the following areas do you need additional support to lead your school effectively? And so the top 2 responses were around addressing chronic student absenteeism, which we know has been a persistent challenge that we've been addressing, and the support for student social, emotional, and mental health. If you recall in the family survey, that also came up as an area where our families also wanted to have more support. And the third place ties, you can see that list there. Then we took the time actually in a leader meeting to ask, what's working about these 2 purple categories around chronic absenteeism and then support for student social, emotional, and mental health, and what more support do you need? So that was really informative actually to think about our district policies and work that have been working and, at the schools and their implementation, what's actually either a barrier or something that we need to revise or refine because it's not helping in the way that we thought it would. So I talked a little bit about the next steps. I can have talk some more about that, but the GLCC overall is got a lot of growth. Individual schools do have their results as well. I believe it's all on the website now. And just for context, in the state, for the TLCC survey, we need to have at least 50% respondents to actually get the results for it to be public, and at least 5 respondents per district or school. And so if you do see a district, and it's public results, so anyone can see any of them for all the districts in Colorado. If they're not public for a district, it's because they did not meet that response threshold. Okay. Oh, there's more.
Yeah, you're totally good. The only thing I would want to, we're going to pivot and talk about the equity impact statement, but I do want to highlight for the board and community that so much of what Dr. Park just presented really ties back to this sense of that we are starting to build momentum. We're starting to gain some traction on our strategic plan. There are real celebrations, and what our parents are seeing and feeling in schools in terms of increased expectations, increased opportunities for learning, increased focus on academic engagement. We see it with as well in TLCC, that faculty feels similarly that they're seeing that increased attention to student academic outcomes. And so it really feels like that momentum that we talk about and the board and community will hear more about as we report on year 2 of the strategic plan and look ahead to year 3, is starting to gain some traction. There's so many celebrations there, and really want to again share appreciation for Dr. Park's leadership, the systems. None of this work, and she would be the first to say, is not due to one person, it's due to entire systems, but we have to have individual people leading those systems and driving them in the same direction. And that really has been the work that Dr. Park has led over her last 4 years. So just want to make sure that our board and community see that, and that we make sure that we continue that work as we move forward. The other thing that I want to draw your attention to, when you saw that digging deeper slide where Dr. Park pulled up the kind of addressing chronic absenteeism and social emotional support for student social emotional and mental health. Hold on to that, because as you know, as a board, what we do is we take this data and our strategic leadership team, a lot of this data goes back into our data dashboard, but our strategic leadership team similarly went through a data analysis process with Dr. Park and looked at these to make sure that they are informing where they align with our strategic plan, are informing our priorities. So for example, one of the things you're going to hear from us when we talk about strategic priority number 1 heading into year 3 is that we're going to reboot and refresh our attendance plan and interventions and supports. We had a new plan about 3 years ago. It's time for us to refresh it. We know our leaders feel like there's some refinement and more support. So you're going to see a nice through line between some of these growth areas. Similarly with student social emotional support, you'll see that also in strategic priorities around students first, where we're going to really be intentional about kind of our what we would call tier 1 social emotional educational initiatives, which means what everybody is getting access to. So you'll see a nice through line between what we learned from this data and how it informs our strategic plan to continue driving. just some things to look forward to in our June meeting. Let's talk about our equity impact statement. So as this board is aware, because many of you were part of passing policy ADB, equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-discrimination. And part of this policy, which defines equity for our district, it defines educational equity as two distinct components that we work towards. The board has outlined in this policy 10 key goals that we need to be working towards, and then have an accountability factor of bringing to the board an annual equity impact statement. There's a much more detailed statement in the board packet. We're just going to look at some highlights right now of some of the work that happened this year and that we're moving into and that will be part of our strategic plan next year. I think another important thing is that when you look at this list of the 10 goals and the 10 priority areas that the board identified in the policy, they align very, very well to our strategic plan. And you can almost just cross-reference each of these into the strategic priority that they fit into. And one of the themes that was part of our equity impact statement last year, and I think even feels more so this year, is that the work we do in alignment with policy ADB is also deeply aligned with our strategic plan. So we are building rich systems around our work in diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-discrimination. It is not an add-on to who we are in the Roaring Fork Schools. It is deeply embedded starting to become more and more embedded in who we are and the way we do business and the way we leverage commitments towards equity to closing the achievement gap in our strategic plan. So just a couple of highlights on progress. Want to lift up, there's been significant work around the daily lesson design in terms of instruction and student outcomes and ensuring educational access for all and equity of outcomes. The daily lesson design really centers our emerging bilingual students and students with disabilities before we even start conceptualizing lessons. It will be implemented next year, K-12. The board will hear much more about this work because it's a key initiative for us in strategic priority number 2. So that launch will be something to really watch and monitor next year. We are really creating the space in terms of our schedules and structures and time with staff to make sure they have the bandwidth to implement this with fidelity next year. Additionally, want to just lift up in terms of policy and culture. The board was able in mid-April to hear from the student leadership teams who are working around really on this work around school policy and culture that supports equity, inclusion, and access. You heard our student leaders who have been grappling with this challenge that is in our data dashboard and aligned to Students First, where we look at student equitable access to participation, engagement, leadership, and ownership in their schools. We heard about professional developments that the students at Basalt were implementing. We heard about activity and athletic fairs and welcome lunches that the students at Fork were hosting. And what you'll see next year is continued support for those student leadership teams, continuing to build momentum on the work that was conducted this year with those groups and make sure it continues into next year in alignment with ADB, policy ADB, and our strategic plan. Also want to lift up Chief Brotman's here. She put a ton of work with the Equity Steering Committee into recruitment through an equity lens. It was a professional development for all of our hiring managers. It was incredibly well received. It grappled both with kind of mindsets and how we think about bias when we're hiring, but also it transformed some of our systems and some of the tools that we use just in the hiring process to make sure that we are giving all potential candidates and equitable access to our hiring processes. So we will continue to do that work next year through our recruitment retention goals. Also want to lift up, this is also kind of in the workforce equity, a lot of the work Chief Brotman is leading. We recently received a Gates Family Foundation grant to hire a professional pipeline navigator to really drive around workforce equity. It's also deeply aligned to our Thriving Team strategic initiatives to recruit and retain a staff that reflects the diversity of the kids we have the privilege to serve. So we're really excited about that work to bring a little muscle into our ability to really recruit and retain a diverse workforce. And then finally, just want to lift up that the data dashboard was launched this year in terms of making sure that folks have access to our data and that is consistently disaggregated in alignment with the goals we're trying to address. And what I think the board can look forward to next year is continued leveraging of that data dashboard to strengthen the data culture that we have in alignment with our goals around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know that was a lot. So we look forward to a discussion on all those updates for tonight.
Thanks. Board members will now have 2 minutes to share comments and questions. Director Ramirez, would you like to begin?
Sure. Thanks, team.
I wanted to ask, I appreciate so much that we have made great efforts to include disaggregated data now. I think it feels crazy to sometimes remember that we're in 2026 and we're appreciating the fact that that is now a norm for the district. But I think it's incredibly important that we maintain that as a norm. So I appreciate the commitment from this team to continuously add that information into your presentations. I think it's important. I do want to ask, have we identified why the positive perceptions from our survey results are not translating into accelerated academic growth for students?
You mean specifically about the expectations or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to see, obviously, the response rates and the responses coming in, but I mean, talking about climate, talking about family engagement, community, those are all things that are part of our strategic plan that we feel should promote student growth and achievement. I'm just wondering if we have identified why that isn't translating into scores for students.
I think perception data is one important metric. I don't think it's the direct correlative metric to push student achievement. I think it is important to have families feeling welcome and kids feeling like they're excited to come to school and they're feeling safe. It's an important systemic factor. There are, perception data isn't necessarily saying, here's our academic outcomes for math or literacy.
Right.
I think we are better poised. I would say we're better poised now than we were several years ago to get better outcomes.
I agree, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that response. I think especially since in the presentation, we elevate quite a bit, including the memo, how there is a perception within the Latino community that their perception is higher, but the student growth and achievement numbers are lower. Wondering if there is, Superintendent Cole, I don't know if you have input on that.
I think similar to Dr. Park's response, I don't know that it's a direct correlation. I think one of the things that maybe goes beyond perception surveys and that we've talked about in more direct conversations with parents and focus groups and equity advisory council and in conversations with families directly is that one of the areas I think especially our Latino families have asked us to be stronger partners with parents in academic support. And really working with families to deeply understand their students' CIVLs, EDEL scores, early literacy. Did I hear that one? Lectura, I'm so sorry. They're been just getting updated on the new testing assessments. That families are really looking for us to partner even more around specifically academics. Like, yes, we need to have safe and welcoming schools at baseline. Yep. And we need to partner with families in terms of communication and outreach. And I think what we've heard from families, not necessarily in perception data, and I think for us, this is really what's weighing into our strategic plan and what you'll see more of when we think of the student-centered partnerships is really better leveraging partnering with families whose kids are not succeeding around academic supports and moving beyond kind of the safe and welcoming schools to like, okay, we've got those relationships in place. We've got that strong sense, that perception that folks feel welcome and supported. And now how do we level up to say, now we need to get to really look together at student academic data and talk about how we make sure families have access to tutoring or additional resources, those sorts of pieces. So I think for us, when we think about partnering with families, and again, the perception surveys are helpful and they show us momentum in some indicators, but I think for us, the bigger gap is how do we more intentionally partner with parents around academics specifically? I don't know that it would speak to this, but I would say for us, that feels like the stickiest gap that we need to address in how we partner with families to really move the needle on student academic outcomes.
Thank you. I think, obviously as a board member looking at this data year after year and seeing our response rates, I've appreciated the commitment from the team to continuously extend the timeline so that we get more response rates. I appreciate that we're using our teams, obviously, to try to get more responses and to do the work. What is the metric we're using for deciding when to pivot? When we feel like this is maybe not working and getting student responses? Is there some expectation that if it goes down next year in response rates, we're gonna do something different?
Do you mean what's the point at which we decide to extend a window? Or,
What's the point at which we decide that the survey, the way that we're administering the survey or doing the outreach for the survey is just not working?
you know, I don't have a defined metric yet, but I do know one of the things we want to do is reassess our survey strategy.
Do we have a timeline for that?
I think next year.
No, I mean, it came up in the strategic planning with our strategic leadership team of thinking about the student perception data or survey, parent perception survey, teacher. We do a lot of those surveys throughout the year and really wanting to be intentional about pausing, stepping back. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? What are those thresholds to say, are we getting what we need out of this data? If we need to hear more about partnering with families around academics, are we asking the right questions? I think as the team started to put together plans for year 3 strategic initiatives, I'm trying to remember, I don't know that we felt like we had capacity to drive that piece, but it was definitely on this needs to be done before the end of the strategic plan, is really to kind of reckon with our perception surveys. Probably what this is going to require, perception surveys are conducted by schools across the state. So we don't need to conduct original research. There's going to be great stuff out there on how do you best use perception surveys or surveys of various constituents to really drive stronger academic outcomes. I think it's going to take a deeper dive for us to really figure out how these best work in alignment. So I don't know specifically on a timeline, but it was something that strategic leadership team has put on our list to say, hey, we need to attend to this before the end of this plan.
Thanks.
Director Nimmo?
Oh, sure. What do you want to tell me, or what can you tell me about the school leader evaluation? What was that about? Do we?
You know, it was like 97% last time. And so to go down to 88% is, I'm not sure. We spend a lot of time and energy. I mean, we have 2 school leader evaluators. That's me and Joel Hathaway. And so,
It's just, I
So,
was thinking it was,
I'll confer. Leaders, that's basically what it is.
yeah, well, I mean, so wait,
Sorry, we're principal evaluators. The principals evaluate the assistant principals. We don't do
Oh,
but principals and assistant principals are all categorized as the school administrator.
okay. Wow. Let's see. Oh, I guess I wanted to say too, just that, I took the surveys, and even being on the board, having been on the board now for several months, I had to answer, I don't know, to some of the district questions. And I guess it'd be nice to think more about, would it be helpful or useful to, try to think of ways to connect our families more with the district, at large. I think the older kids with older kids and more kids maybe would, but yeah, so it'd be fun to think about that or talk about that more. I also just wanted to point out that, I think people are very survey exhausted. Like, I've heard it on the news, every single place you go, everything you sign up for, everywhere you have to take surveys. So I still think it's a great tool, and I'm glad you guys are doing it, and I hope that we do keep doing it. People respond a lot more when they're really upset. So to some extent, when people aren't filling out the surveys, it's because they don't really have anything to say. So I guess that's just me acknowledging that it is difficult to use surveys and have people fill them out. But thank you for doing that. And I love so much of what I'm seeing on here. I'm excited to be a part of this district. And to see where we're going. I know that we're going up. That's all I've got for now.
Director Gulenberg? Sure.
Thanks for the presentation on both of these. It's always reaffirming to see survey results like this. And I think that it is a testament to the work that's been done over the past several years, and hopefully we can continue on this trajectory. I'm curious, did any of the questions change last year to this year in the parent and family survey, or were they all the same?
They're the same.
Okay. Sometimes that happens, and that's why we see shifts. So I've learned to ask that question. And then for the scrolling through all the slides, sorry. For the equity impact statement, I appreciate the linking it to the strategic plan. And I think that that is obviously great practice. I would love to hear more about kind of the recruitment through an equity lens, PD, and not right now, just in the future. And basically the workforce equity piece, because I think it's something that we discuss a lot. We see that our teachers are reporting that we are a great place to work. And so how can we draw some connections across those and increase diversity in our workforce, especially as we have like important next steps ahead of us as a board to consider. So I would love to hear kind of more about that. But I don't have any specific questions on this. I'm very happy to see that a press release went out on this earlier today, because I think these are the types of things that our community needs to be aware of. And so I'm grateful that we had the foresight to get that out ahead of this presentation tonight. And thank you, Dr. Park, for all the work that you've done on data. I know I've said it every year, but like sitting here now, it's a completely different experience than it was just a handful of years ago. And this data culture is a result of your kind of tenacity and your ability to push through and push our systems and our culture. And I'm extremely grateful for that as a parent and as a board member. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Just a reminder, anyone following along online or in the room, this is all available in our public memo on the website for the Board of Education. So if you can't see the slides, please feel free to pull those up on your devices if you want to see these numbers. I just want to echo what my fellow directors have said. I don't have a lot to add, except that our staff responses continue to outpace the state on statements about their school being a good place to work. Is that correct? I see in the memo, you have 95% of staff would recommend their school. Colorado averages 87, and then 93% would recommend their school as a good place for students to learn. Colorado, 90%. So we're struggling in a lot of ways as a rural school to beat the numbers, but I like that one. And I know that it doesn't happen by accident. I know that it happens by engagement and intentional investment from your team and then the building leaders that we have. And it's just really encouraging to get to walk through those halls sometimes. We were at Carbondale Middle School last week, Director Kuhlenberg and myself, and we got some of that face-to-face communication and vibe while we were there, and appreciated that. Thank you for following up on the equity impact statement. Again, it's great to have that continuity annually on these initiatives instead of just stamping them, saying we're done, and then moving on. So thank you for bringing that back. Can you just talk to me a little bit? This time last year, we were talking about adopting a policy and then immediately being out of compliance and what that would feel like and how aggressive that was of a step. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel like you addressed that gap when it came to ADB?
Sure. You know, yes, ADB really highlights that what the work that we're doing, and it sets the bar from the board that we are, I mean, you can see on that, I'm jumping to slide 50, that I'll read because I think this is important from the policy. Educational equity means differentiating resource allocation within budgetary limitations to meet the needs of students who need more support and opportunities to succeed academically. Our focus should be on mitigating or eliminating barriers for students that are within our control and teaching, supporting and helping students overcome barriers that are outside of our control. I think what ADB does is it sets the bar to say we're looking for equitable outcomes for all kids. In terms of being immediately out of compliance, our outcomes aren't there yet. But I think in the definition and the details around educational equity, what the policy does is it provides us a pathway and a process to say you focus on these things to try to get there and to intentionally move in that direction in terms of, you know, what educational equity means and differentiating resource allocation. And so I think that what the policy does is state the expectation and then explains through the details and the goals of that these are all the areas that we expect this work to be moving in. And so although sure, we're not at that place of having equitable outcomes for all kids, the fact that the work that we're doing is aligned to these key areas really states that we're moving with intention and cohesive direction towards those outcomes. And that it's not haphazard. And so I do think even though we haven't achieved those ambitious goals that the policy states, we are aligning our work in the right areas. And that feels then, I think, like meaningful work and meaningful accountability and progress, so long as we stick with that, right? And we keep the data updated and we keep the reporting coming and we keep our eyes on this. To Director Ramirez's point earlier, that we make sure we're looking at data disaggregated, that we're looking at subgroups, that we're paying attention to that work. So it's a little bit of like, yeah, out of compliance in terms of outcomes, but in terms of process, it's really tightening us up. And that feels, I think, correct with the spirit of what the policy is setting. Is that answer?
Thanks. Yeah. We now have 5 minutes of open board discussion.
I'm just following up on my 2 minutes. I think an update on the survey assessment would be great. It would be helpful as you guys are doing your strategic plan, and just keeping in mind, obviously, that perception. I mean, I agree, obviously, perception is one thing, and it looks great when it's up on the slides or in a press release. But I think it's really important to be able to identify when it's actually making an impact on student achievement, growth, and outcomes, and when it's just feeling nice to go into and walk into a place, which granted also was a place where we needed improvement. And so I appreciate that effort. I would just like to make sure that it's translating into actual growth for students, connection with families, all of the things that we believe as a district it should translate into. I also wanted to ask, in regards to the data dashboard, how many years of funding do we have set for that?
We've baked the funding. I mean, we had initial startup costs that we baked into the current 25-26 school year budget. And now we are like, our team has really took a lot of time this year to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to maintain and sustain and potentially even level it up? Because I think we've, been in it now for a couple months and feel like, oh, we can still do better on this. So I think, I don't know the exact number, I can get back to you, but I know it's something that we've baked into I want to say it's in the ACES budget, but I know I don't know exactly which budget, but we can get back to you on it, like exactly how much is for the data dashboard maintenance. Because it is a budget item. It's in our.
The beginning was a building and a startup. A lot of maintenance is office.
I'm happy to submit it as a board tracker. I would really like to know not only like how many years we have funding for, but what is, as it relates to your strategic plan, how many years are we looking at maintaining this?
I mean, I would for sure, as long as this strategic plan is in place, like continuing it, making sure it gets better, tighter, clearer, more accessible, I think are some of the priorities and things that our strategic leadership team has been talking about with it, that sometimes it's like, oh, it feels kind of clunky, or can it be easier? Or can it be more accessible? I mean, we kind of got into this entire bucket of like, who's it for and who's the audience? And let's not duplicate stuff people can find on CDE's website. Like, what are we really doing here? And I think for us, it was really about, I think, being able to the purpose of that data dashboard, again, is not to just reproduce other data available elsewhere, but it's really about the strategic plan and holding us accountable to the outcomes that strategic plan has been kind of chunked into. And so for us, it's really about making sure that the data we're looking in there is very tight to the strategic priorities, the strategic goals and measures and outcomes that we're trying to achieve, and shows over time. And I think that's another piece that we've been grappling with, is like, okay, well, we were able to show initial baseline data, year 1 data. Now we're into year 2 data. How do these things need to blow up? Because our intent is that we'll absolutely follow the next 3 years of the strategic plan. Beyond that, I'm not sure. In year 5 of our strategic plan, we'll probably do another one. And at that point, we can talk about the way data fits. But for our current thinking, that data dashboard is really the accountability measure for the public, for the board about that plan. And so it needs to go in parallel with the plan.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, seeing those numbers improve, even just from the 14% response rate when we started to the 32% on the school survey, is definitely worth celebrating. And I know that that's that relationship piece that the buildings are leveraging, because that's where parents connect, is with their teachers and with their front office. So thank you. Sorry, I'm frozen here. All right, at this time, we welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board. There are currently 6 speakers signed up, plus the 2 who registered, so a total of 8 this evening. The board allots a total of 45 minutes for public comment. To respect the time of all who are present, speakers are to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. The clock is right over there. Reminder to all speakers to uphold our procedures for public comment. We ask you to be thoughtful and constructive with your comments and thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. And we welcome your respectful participation as an audience listening to a public meeting. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may always do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we received 2 written comments. Our first speaker is Eleanor Herring.
Hello, my name's Eleanor Herring. I was previously known as Eleanor Perry. I'm a 4th-generation resident of the Valley. My 2 children, who are both students in the district, are 5th generation. I'm here tonight as a parent, a community member, and a healthcare provider. I want to ensure that there's a clear voice to be heard supporting our healthcare education. The loudest voice in the room is not always the voice of the majority. Our community has repeatedly demonstrated support for a comprehensive, age-appropriate health education for our children. I work in healthcare as a physician assistant. From a healthcare standpoint, having health education is important for our youth. Providing a safe, inclusive environment improves long-term health outcomes. Research consistently shows comprehensive health education is associated with lower rates of substance use, tobacco use, reduced risky behavior, fewer sexually transmitted infections, fewer unintended pregnancies, and improved mental health outcomes. It also teaches our children the language and skills that help them recognize unhealthy situations and helps them to seek help when something is wrong. A kid who receives health education and feels included is more likely to reach out in the future for help or with questions. Learning appropriate terminology for private body parts can increase awareness and decrease a child's risk for sexual assault. To drive this point home on a very specific level, here's a local example. A couple years ago, there was a student in one of our local elementary schools who asked to speak to her teacher after a health class. She disclosed for the very first time that her uncle was inappropriately touching her. Ultimately, the case went to trial. The uncle was found guilty. The student fortunately received trauma-focused mental health services and is now thriving. She reported that she would not have disclosed the abuse without the information she received in her health education class. Another point that has always stayed with me is that health education and supportive school environments save lives. Suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death among young people aged 15 to 24 years old in our country. Our LGBTQ+ youth is especially vulnerable. Providing a safe, inclusive environment can decrease risk of suicide in our LGBTQ+ youth by up to 40%. We, the community, understand that our kids are being introduced to different health education topics at an age-appropriate level. Let me repeat that, at an age-appropriate level. We support our teachers and faculty receiving the training they need to handle all the questions or topics that arise. In conclusion, please hear that the community at large supports the health education curriculum. This is about education and well-being, not politics. It's about ensuring children know how to ask for help.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Molly Fales.
Hi, I'm Molly Fales. I am parent of a kindergartner and I have a 2-year-old as well who will be joining the district in a couple years. Like Eleanor, I am a 4th-generation resident of the Valley. I don't think that actually has any bearing on my opinion, other than I really want you guys to know that there is a broad swath of the community behind you supporting this health curriculum. It's not just people that moved here. It's not one group. This is a really broad community support. I think we've had several elections recently where the health curriculum has been at issue and the community has consistently shown and voted in a way that supports the health curriculum. So I think my daughter is in kindergarten at Crystal River Elementary School. We got the notice, it came home. I think it came home at least a month before the curriculum was taught. It was very clear that there was an opportunity to opt out if you were not comfortable with the curriculum. All the materials were provided. When I looked at it, I was excited that my child would have the opportunity to learn this in school, to hear it from somebody other than her parents. I'm not always a great teacher, so having her have the opportunity to have a professional teacher explain these things seemed really great. I think it seemed appropriate for kindergarten. And I know, like, yeah, I may teach my child anatomically correct words for body parts, but not every parent is able to do that. So having that offered to all the students for the reasons that Eleanor highlighted is just so important. I was really disappointed that that curriculum did not move forward because there were a handful of very vocal parents who spoke out and didn't feel that the opt-out was enough for their kid or didn't want their kid to be opted out. I will say I grew up going to school here. My mother opted me out of plenty of things. Field trips that she didn't think were educational enough, movie days at school. Things she was like, nope, we can do something better at home. Getting opted out is not the worst thing. It's okay. We will all survive. And I think we need to learn to, how do we teach our kids to be inclusive, kind, caring? I want my child to understand that not everybody is exactly like her. We have different beliefs, different systems, but I want her to know that it's okay to be different and to trust that people have good intentions and to care for them and support them.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Hattie Johnson.
Hello, school board. Thanks for having me this evening. And I do understand that this has been a topic at many of your meetings and that at your last meeting. The implementation of the comprehensive human sexuality curriculum was a big topic. So I appreciate you continuing to listen to our thoughts on this topic. Like Molly, I'm a mother of a kindergartner at CRES and also a 2-year-old who will be entering the system, the school district in a few years. And like all parents, I did receive that notification and opt-out information about the 3 R's curriculum. I appreciated being able to read through the lesson plans and get somewhat of an understanding of how this material is going to be presented to my child. I, at first, admit it was a bit surprising. It wasn't something that I learned when I was in kindergarten, but upon reading through it and reading a little bit more research about the protection, especially against child sexual abuse that Eleanor talked about, I was excited that that was going to be a topic of learning and in a learning environment for my son. I was also upset to hear that the Understanding Our Bodies lesson wasn't going to be included. From what I understand of the 3 R's curriculum, that is an optional lesson. However, what concerned me more was that the lesson could be dropped, and what was originally going to be presented to our children was no longer, after, from what I can only understand, to be some pushback from parents. Rarely do parents get excited to answer questions about bodies or functions, especially sex, from our children. But like many other parenting issues, there aren't parenting books that lay out exactly how you handle such questions. And because of that, having this in that classroom setting felt really supportive of our family. I also began to appreciate more about the curriculum, and not only just its protection against child sexual abuse, but the vast array of health benefits that come from having this sort of curriculum in our schools. I've always been so pleased how Crystal River includes emotional learning as a part of the regular school day, and that this curriculum would be another opportunity to meet that standard. It's an incredibly important piece for me for raising respective, inclusive, and kind children. I also think that sensitivity of this topic and the opt-out process was perfectly appropriate and easily accessible. Lastly, I just thank you again for hearing more about this topic and appreciate your extreme insight into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kirsten Hicks.
Hi, school board. Thank you for having me. My son will be entering Sopris Elementary next year as a kindergartner. I also want to state my support of the 3R curriculum. Reading through it, I've been on your website. You guys have in my mind, very clear listing of what's included in each grade, what's optional in those things, what's recommended or required by the state to be taught. I think for all the points that Eleanor made, it's an incredible curriculum to include. It is concerning to me that a small group of parents that can potentially influence what's included in the curriculum, maybe after. I don't totally understand, and reading through it, how the decision is made, whether, what optional curriculum is included or not included, or if just the general plan is that all recommended curriculum is included. To my mind, I think that's best. But what I am concerned about is that if those voices shout loud enough, that then my child might miss out on those things, which is why it seems to me the opt-out exists, to protect children from losing access to that information and losing the ability to learn those things. So I just hope and encourage you guys to please protect those things for our children, or to stand by them. Again, I don't totally understand how those things are implemented and decided upon, but I would hope that when the school has decided that this is a good curriculum, that we stand by that opt-out system and allow, if parents disagree, that they can sign their children out. Because otherwise, I want an opt-in. I want to be able to have my son learn those things in kindergarten. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jody Barr.
Hi, I am speaking tonight as a former teacher and a concerned citizen. I really appreciate that the board and superintendent addressed the comprehensive sex ed curriculum at the last board meeting, calling it what it is and not a health curriculum. I really sincerely appreciate that. Also, thank you for hearing our concerns with opt-out policies and discussing the importance of clearly informing parents about what is being taught in this very controversial curriculum for many. This is one step in the right direction, though I hope for many more. The last school board meeting, a board member stated, "I just think fact checking is really important. No matter where you are, no matter who is presenting the material, fact check us, fact check everything." I appreciate that statement, and that is exactly what I hope to do tonight. As mentioned, on May 13th, the superintendent presented an update on the implementation of the comprehensive sexual ed curriculum. During that presentation, several claims were made about the 3Rs curriculum, specifically that it's evidence-based and promotes inclusion. After doing some research and speaking with families throughout the district, I would like to address a few of those claims. First, in the presentation, Anna Cole cited the Colorado Child Sexual Abuse and Assault Prevention Resource Guide and stated that the document identifies the 3Rs curriculum as evidence-based and effective. However, after reviewing the full 83-page guide, I found that while 32 curricula are specifically listed as evidence-based, 3Rs curriculum is not among them. I also researched whether the curriculum has been independently and rigorously studied with measurable outcomes. So far, I have not found evidence demonstrating that standard. While the curriculum may be described as effective, that term is much broader and less rigorous than evidence-based. Secondly, I would like to address the claim that this curriculum promotes inclusion. After speaking with multiple families across the district, I can assure you it does not. Students who opt out feel very excluded when they are removed from the classroom and separated from their peers. They get poked fun of, bullied, and feel like they're missing out. At the same time, there's also students who remain in the classroom despite sharing many of the same beliefs and values as opt-out families. These students often feel uncomfortable and unable to openly express their perspectives during classroom discussions. Inclusion needs to truly include all. Otherwise, how can it be called inclusion? One board member stated, "I am convinced we are not hurting any children." Respectfully, I disagree. When students feel excluded, isolated, or unable to participate authentically because their beliefs differ from the values reflected in the curriculum, harm is done. And when children are hurting, families feel that hurt as well. I believe we can fulfill the responsibility of student safety by implementing a genuinely evidence-based curriculum that actually fosters inclusion and respects the diverse beliefs and values of all families in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lindsay Petrenchik. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lindsay Petrenchik. I'm a clinical pharmacist, biostatistician, and previously a Title I teacher. Although I live in Aspen, and I'm not from the district, I care about the long-term well-being of the students across the valley. I'd like to briefly explain the lens I bring to this discussion. Earlier in my career, I managed hormone therapy, often called gender-affirming care, for transgender patients. That experience made me cautious about anything in a school setting that could normalize or indirectly encourage pathways that are inappropriate for children. As a biostatistician, I also understand both the strengths and limitations of observational data. And as a former Title I teacher, I understand how truly limited instructional time and resources are. With that context, I'd like to thank you all board members for the many hours that you put in, and especially the work that the public does not see. Thank you for also highlighting that a priority of comprehensive sex ed is to prevent sexual violence before it occurs. We can all agree safety is paramount. First, 3 Rs is not the only option, and my concern is that it goes beyond what is necessary. With 40% below grade level, we don't have the luxury to spend scarce time and resources adopting new controversial curriculum with a strong emphasis on gender identity and is not tied to measurable safety outcomes. I understand Colorado law requires that gender identity not be ignored, but not ignored does not mean it must be emphasized. We can meet legal requirements without making this a major focus. Second, we should be clear about evidence. History is full of interventions that look evidence-based until better studies show that the effect was smaller, different, or even reversed. And that happens especially in education programs where outcomes are hard to measure and implementation varies. Scared Straight is a classic cautionary example. Furthermore, research around comprehensive sex ed has a recurring biases, short-lived effects, subgroup findings only, heavily reliance on attitudes and self-reports instead of behavior, and non-independent evaluations conducted by those invested in the program. 3 Rs may be standards aligned, but standard alignment is not outcome evidence. 3 Rs has been adopted in roughly 500 schools, but there are no studies of its outcomes. If sexual violence is so high in the Valley, why would we adopt a program with no evidence of reducing sexual violence? Choose programs with proven results like Green Dot, Safe Dates, or Shifting Boundaries. So my request is simple: pause adoption of 3 Rs and bring back options that are clearly evidence-based for the outcomes we care about, legally compliant and age appropriate, and mindful of our academic crisis. Our kids deserve programs that are not just well-intentioned, but proven to work.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robin Colt.
Hello, board. My name is Robin Colt. I'm a former biology teacher with 15 years of experience in the classroom and a master's degree in life science. I've taught both science in the district and at independent schools and developed age-appropriate health curriculum. I have a son currently at Crystal River Elementary and also a 2-year-old who will be joining the district in a couple of years. So I'm speaking tonight both as an educator and a parent. Children who learn accurate anatomical language and understand the concept of consent are statistically better protected from sexual abuse. They can name what happened to them. They can tell a trusted adult. Abusers rely on shame and confusion. Age-appropriate health education removes both. The committee that built this curriculum did not cut corners. They brought together health educators, school nurses, pediatric specialists, and a representative from Riverbridge Regional Center. a nonprofit whose entire mission is supporting children who have survived sexual abuse. These professionals spent 2 years studying Colorado's requirements and the research on best practices. 2 years. I also want to address the claim that parents were kept in the dark. I have a kindergartner in this district. He's very excited about bringing home his yellow folder every Friday and sharing it with me. So I was notified of the opt-out procedure in writing more than once. The hard copy came home in the weekly yellow folder. A notification came through the electronic newsletter. The district followed the law, followed best practices in health education, and communicated the opt-out option in multiple written formats. My experience as a parent in this district does not match the narrative being presented to this board at large. I also want to speak directly to the name calling that has happened in this community. Calling the professionals who helped adopt this curriculum groomers is not a policy argument. It's a smear against the exact people whose careers are dedicated to protecting people from that very harm. Pediatric nurses, sexual abuse counselors, classroom teachers, people who chose difficult, often painful work because they care about kids. Labeling them with the most serious accusation you can level at an adult who works with children is wrong, and this board should say so clearly. This curriculum also matters for students who don't see themselves reflected anywhere else. For LGBTQ+ students in this valley, having their existence acknowledged in the classroom, not celebrated, not centered, simply acknowledged, it can be the difference between feeling like they belong in this world and feeling like they don't. My 15 years in the classroom taught me one thing above all else. Children are safest when they have language, knowledge, and adults who take them seriously. That is exactly what this curriculum offers. I urge the board to stand behind the work of the professionals who built it.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Sandy Workler.
Hi, my name is Sandy Workler. My husband and I have raised our 2 sons in the Roaring Fork Valley. They attended school K through 12 in the Basalt School District. We are now grandparents of elementary school children. Let me begin by saying thank you for the opportunity to share my views, my thoughts with you. I'd like to say that I stand with a group of parents that consist of people who care and are deeply concerned with the health and well-being of their children and all children. I'm not here to condemn or fight with anyone. I'm here to just ask that you all consider what effect all of this is having on all of our children. By introducing this curriculum causes these little ones confusion, mistrust, and in many cases, depression. It is doing more harm than good. Those children, adults who deal with these particular feelings don't even want to feel that way. In most cases, they are confused and depressed. After speaking with friends who have a child going through this, the child tells their parents they wish more than anything that they weren't having these feelings, which brings me to the point of why do you want to introduce these thoughts to all of our children so that no one's left behind? Everyone gets to struggle so that no one feels bad or different. The fact is we are all different and unique. What is your motive for introducing this, what I think is perverse curriculum to our sons and daughters? Is it financial? Is it a money thing? Is it personal agenda? And I just don't really understand what qualifies you to teach our children these things. Instead, I would encourage you to teach our children how to survive in this world through giving them knowledge through reading, writing, and arithmetic, and how to eat healthy and make healthy choices. Instead, you're implementing a curriculum that causes them to second guess who they are. You're teaching them how to keep secrets by letting them know that your secret's safe with me, and essentially telling them that their parents don't have their best interest. Not to mention the perverse spirit you're trying to foster in them. Do you truly believe they should listen to a teacher who isn't qualified to explain to them how to have sex and then to tell them gender is now not a thing? In the last meeting, one of the parents was told to stop reading the book that our young men in the Basalt High School was required to read by their teacher. I asked Lindsay why she stopped him, and she said because she didn't know anything about the teacher instructing the student to read this book called Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow. She was unaware of this book. As someone who is on the school board, I think it's imperative that all of you know these things, and I believe that that's your job to know these things, what's going on in the school. Through this curriculum, things like this will happen. Not all teachers will lead their students astray, but there are the ones who will. So why even introduce a program that will give each teacher the right to teach it how they will? Again, this has no place in our schools. This curriculum causes division between all of us. Whether you believe in God or not, you can be assured that the little children are at the forefront of his heart, and he does not take it lightly when we mislead, hurt, or hinder any one of them. If you believe your program is so wonderful, then you should be having school meetings with the parents because it is very so much their business. You need to discuss the whole curriculum, not just parts of it, word for word, not through a website. You should then let them decide for them and their own children what is best for the family by creating an opt-in will allow everyone the freedom and opportunity to choose. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment for this evening. Moving on to the next business in order. We have our consent agenda, which includes routine personnel, minutes from our previous board meeting, and policies IHBG, IKB, IKC, JJH, and JKF. Directors, are there any items you would like to pull off the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote? Yes, Director Ramirez.
Sure.
All good.
My page is reloading.
JKF, was it?
IKB.
IKB.
I can pull it. I move that we pull IKB off the consent agenda, report cards, progress reports.
Yes. Second.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, removing IKB.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the vote.
There's a separate conversation on IKB, or it's going to be pulled from the meeting.
Separate discussion.
Okay, thanks. Director DeFreitas,
Aye.
Director Kohlenberg,
Aye.
Director Nemo, Director Ramirez.
Director Ramirez, did you want to open with just a quick thought about what we needed to adjust there?
Yeah, thanks team for taking this back to policy committee. I appreciated the edits. I did have one ask. In the original policy, there was a sentence in here regarding supplementary reports required for students in danger of failure.
I just added a bullet point to the fourth because we adjusted the way that that was listed and bulleted it out to make clear the difference between required reports and supplementary. And so I think just when we shifted that, we deleted that language around students at risk of failure. So I think if we just add that fourth, I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
That fourth bullet back in,
Perfect.
that addresses the concern.
Does that sound right? Then do I have a motion to approve IKB as amended?
I make a motion to approve IKB as amended.
I second.
Then let's call the vote.
Director DeFreitas.
Aye.
Director Kohlenberg.
Aye.
Director Nemo, Director Ramirez.
Thank you. All right, the next business in order is first reading of the 26-27 budget and retirement incentive plan. Chief Chicoine will begin by briefly covering some slides, and then we'll move into board Q&A.
Thank you, Director DeFreitas. So we're just really excited to have this next iteration of the budget with lots more information for the board to ponder and to really give some feedback on. We're super excited about that. So I'm just going to go through this information. There's a lot here, and then take questions at the end if that makes sense. Okay. There's actually a couple of different topics in here as well, but it's just because of the timing of everything of when we needed to talk about everything, and everything's related to the budget. So the first part of the agenda is looking at the early retirement incentive program update that the board's been asking for, then looking at budget assumptions, general fund update, and then the remainder of the funds that the board has not yet reviewed. So hopefully this we'll just go through this fairly quickly, but I'm not going to go through it too quickly because I want to make sure that everybody is understanding each part, each component of these budgets. Okay. Oops. I did that again. Sorry. Thank you. Okay.
So the early retirement incentive update. So I have the current policy link there for anybody that'd like to see it. So just a summary of this is that this benefit has been in place for a long time, meaning decades, for this district. And so it goes back quite a ways. And basically, it's based upon years of experience and a percent of salary received at retirement. So currently, the 26-27 budget totals $989,000 for this benefit, $622,000 recurring, and $367,000 in one-time dollars that were not added on a permanent basis to the budget. So the one-time dollars were noted that way during negotiations, just to make sure that everybody was aware that those monies are one-time. The availability of the incentive starts at 15 years. Work at Roaring Fork School District for both certified and classified staff, and increases from 25% to 50% of salary between years 15 and 20 of service. Okay. Originally, way back decades ago, this was considered budget neutral. And now it's not, because back when it was considered budget neutral, that was before all of the critical shortage in the legislature that was allowed for people to come back to the district. We had fewer years of out of district experience allowed on the salary schedule, and salary savings, they're now mostly budgeted, already baked into our budget. So we don't have this available savings in our budget for this line item. It is a valued benefit for our current staff. That's just a very important point. Our staff really sees this as a very valuable benefit for them, and they hold it pretty special. All comparable districts have sunsetted this policy in the past because of those legislative changes, such as critical shortage, have pretty much outdated this policy in a lot of ways. We have talked about this during as an interest during the IBB process throughout the whole year, and as a conversation on reducing volatility on the budget, because there's no way to really budget this reasonably, understanding what that is going to look like, because there's no way to determine when people are going to retire. So the financial challenges associated with this policy, we've talked a little bit about volatility of timing, when people are going to take the benefit. We just can't accurately budget that. We do the best we can, but it is challenging. We have some, I guess, different spreadsheets that we try to estimate how many people could take it, but really it ultimately depends on who does or doesn't take the benefit. The current liability is increasing. It's currently approximately 5.3 million. And if we don't do anything for the policy, the liability will increase by 800,000 estimated, with potential raises from the mill levy and from the 1.1 million, as well as increases in vesting from for 26-27. There's different cost drivers that we've been looking at with the Early Retirement Incentive Committee. And these levers, they're just like pushing levers to just determine how you can mitigate the costs and what causes increased costs. There's the base salary calculation of, if we were to freeze the base salary at a particular year, that's one of the levers we could use to change the policy. There's the percent of salary, and how much moving that from 25 to 50% up or down obviously is going to change what our liability is. Freezing years of service, or moving years of service. If we freeze the years of service, that's a way that we can stop our liability from increasing. So, and then how many years to sunset? Because it's really a balance of looking at what's reasonable for employees as far as for their planning, compared to the liabilities and some of the financial impacts of this policy. Former employee eligibility is another one. The staff are staying well engaged in this discussion. Like I had mentioned earlier, we do have a committee that's looking at this, that is heavily attended with certified and classified and admin representation. So that's really good. So more information to come on this policy, but just wanted to give you a brief update of where we're at on this, and I'm sure we're going to have some more questions from the board. Okay. So then going right into the budget. So we did have a couple of changes with the budget, slight changes at this point, legislative changes to finalize the inflation at 2.4% and minor adjustments here and there. So now we're very close to balanced budget at negative 5,936 on a recurring basis. The other thing to note of something that I did from the carryover for the carryover dollars is that I added $1.3 million in carryover of use of fund balance to memorialize the use of the 24-25 audit savings towards either revenue reductions or rescissions, state rescissions, or one-time health insurance if it's not needed for the former two. So that's just to make sure that we have that memorialized in our fund balance conversations. Let's see here, and other small, very small adjustments. So looking at budget assumptions, the funded pupil count changed just slightly, per pupil funding changed slightly compared to the last, but it's not necessarily seen as material. And I did add that $1.3 million conversation for the state rescissions, student loss count, or health insurance increases for employees. Okay, so then looking at the 26-27 mill levy summary, and this does exclude the potential of a mill levy override, just to be very clear on this. This is based upon our current mill levies, the way that they are as they stand right now. So what's really beneficial from a taxpayer vantage point and from a board vantage point is to understand what your budget is looking like from how is that going to impact the property taxpayer. So we have 4 different types of mill levy rates. We have the total program funding mill, the mill levy override mill, the bond redemption fund mill, and abatement. So total program funding is for all of our state funding per pupil revenue. That's the state's, or that's our local property tax share of that. And it went from 26.759 directly to 27. That is intentional from the legislative standpoint that the mill is increasing 1 mills until it gets to 27, and now we've hit that 27 mark. So then the mill levy override is increased slightly just because of an inflationary increase in the dollars. And bond redemption mill had increased slightly because there's a slight increase in our debt repayment just for 26-27. And the abatement mill is not yet calculated. So when you look at the mill levy increase, it would be a 0.5% increase. This is presuming a flat assessed valuation compared to 2025, because this is not an assessment year. So this is an off year cycle. So, but generally with new construction, we could get that 0.5% to 1% increase in assessed valuation, at which point we would have no increase in the mill. So this is considered a conservative calculation, just to make sure we've got things covered. So, so that is that. Okay, so no changes in the general fund projection compared to the last conversation, the last board meeting for 25-26. 26-27, this is what it looks like on a financial statement, if you will, very basic financial statement with the use of carryover. So we are going to see a $3.3 million deficit, but recurring it's 5,000. And then I'm going to just pass over this slide because it's, well, shoot, you can't really see that one as well. But okay, I'll go back to this one. Okay. So the minimum fund balance per policy is 12.1 million. And so our unencumbered reserves are 2.6 million. So, and the difference between 3.9 that I had the conversation the last time and 2.6 is that 1.3 that we've been discussing throughout this presentation. And then the carryover dollars by each one of the categories of carryover is listed under the use of reserves in the middle of this page, if anybody is interested in that. So then another thing that had come up at the last board meeting is the S&P rating and the fund balance discussion. Okay, so I added this slide just to start having that conversation and get this on the board's radar per your request. And I think it's a very important request in looking at this and seeing what we should do. So board policy DB does outline the fund balance requirements for the general fund.
And that includes 10% general fund reserves plus a 3% Tabor emergency reserve with no minimum fund balance requirement for our cap projects fund. Now, capital projects, the one thing I want to note as far as a fact is that, and this is based upon the dollars of when construction occurred in our capital projects, for all of the district's assets, we're at about $330 million. So in today's dollars, it's even higher than that, much higher. And so when you're looking at having not a lot of money in your capital projects fund, it's just something that we can look at with that. That's a way that we might be able to look at changing that. I don't know what the board would like to do as far as looking at the capital projects fund, but that's something that we can talk about. So I do have the S&P rating report linked in there, but it does downgrade the district's rating from AA- to A+. The S&P rating agency is was utilized for the certificates of participation debt that we currently hold. And so they are required to review the district's debt every 2 years. So that's why they did the rating in the first place. So the good thing to note is that it does not affect the cost of our current debt when we are downgraded slightly. A+ rating is still a decent rating. If the rate remains, it will increase the cost of new debt slightly because we're seen as a bit riskier to investors. But it's still, like I said, it's still a good rating. It's not like we're risky. It's more like it's just all relative on a continuum. The rating reduction, it just reflects the lower fund balance, even though most of that change in fund balance was because of the Meadowood Housing Project. They don't really care what it was for. It's just more the fact that they want to see a higher fund balance. And the report indicates a direct correlation between the fund balance and the rating. So they're stating that if we have a further reduction in fund balance, that they could see a further rating reduction. So they're just indicating to be really cautious with any additional uses of fund balance. And they also noted, of course, they're going to say potentially could increase the rating if the reserves increase. So a bit softer language on the upside, but still upside language, showing a direct correlation on that. So no change on the 27-28 future outlook. There's lots of things that can happen in 27-28. We're just going to have to monitor that one. Charter school fund, this is including TRCS, Two Rivers Community School, and Carbondale Community School, are our two internal charters. And what they do is they provide their draft budget to me, and then I incorporate it in here for us to approve in our budget. And so just a couple of things to note is that the general fund allocation increased $773,000 compared to FY26 in the FY27 budget. And a lot of that is because of the legislature. It was because of some increase in the number of students for TRCS and CCS, and also a decline in the Roaring Fork School District students, reflecting that that then there's a shift in the percentages and how those are being distributed between the internal charters and the school district. So that's just kind of how that generally works right now. Food service fund. I just want to give a shout out to Ben and Octavio. They did a wonderful job managing this fund. They are very cautious with everything, and they also provide a really good service for our kids as well, as far as healthy lunches and meals for our students. I think they do a fantastic job, and they just really try to maximize their revenues and mitigate expenses without impacting the program. And I just see that in working with them in their budget. So, and we are still showing $187,000 deficit for the FY27 year. I believe that to be reasonable given our ending fund balances at $1 million, or roughly a quarter of our operation expenditures. I think that's reasonable on our fund balance. And we kept our general fund transfer the same at $200,000 between years. Grant fund, the only thing to note here, I mean, I have all the major grants listed here, is that we're seeing a decline in the amount of our grants and the number of grants, just because, I mean, the state is really declining a lot of their or decreasing their grants that they're continuing, and federal government, we know that we've also seen reductions on that scale as well. So. Bond redemption fund, as stated earlier, we talked about the mill levy. I do show a surplus for this fund, overall surplus. But the reason why I'm asking for additional revenues is because we have to be thoughtful of our cash flow, because our property tax comes in the spring and we owe a lot of the bond payment in December. So we have to make sure we can cover that December payment. So we have to be really thoughtful on a cash flow basis. So looking at this is just additional information in the case that the district is looking at a bond and what the debt ceiling would be. We have room is what it's saying, but it's just for note right now. And it's really good for you to also note the debt service by year, and note that our debt will be fully repaid after the 2035-2036 school year. So roughly 10 years. Capital projects, we're looking at $200,000 deficit. This presumes $300,000 in impact fees that are paid through the municipal governments for new developments within the municipal governments, and also $500,000 in contingency that Ben really holds aside to make sure that there aren't any emergency projects. And we do have a target, and this is what I was talking about and referring to a little bit in the previous conversation about our fund balance policy. And fund balance is that right now I'm targeting a $5 million fund balance for capital projects. I would really like to see this fund balance continue to increase slowly with the use of that impact fees and mitigating the use of the contingency over time. So it's just one way we can continue to slowly rebuild our fund balance without a very large impact on the district. Ben does a really great job of managing this fund also. Housing fund. I know that was the conversation at the work session partially as well, and there may be additional costs that we need to incorporate in this budget depending upon that discussion during the work session. But prior to any JW Drive costs, this is what this looks like for this year. The fund balance, which is roughly 42 million, and any fund balance includes all of our capital assets. So that is a very large number because that includes all the costs of our buildings at the cost that they were when we built them. Okay. Excluding capital assets, this is the important number, is 1.2 million that we have available. Depreciation is the reason why we are showing a deficit of 1.15 million. If you look at the depreciation number of 1.3 million. So on a cash basis, we're really bringing in an extra 150 grand roughly for FY27 for the maintenance of the current housing stock. Funds fairly constrained just because of inflationary pressures on expenditures, coupled with not very large or zero increases in our salary schedules over the last couple of years. And that trend could continue depending upon what happens with the mill levy override and that kind of thing. Okay. And the rental income from the superintendent house is included in this fund. This house has been rented by staff over the last 2 years, and as it has not been needed for senior leadership recruitment. I just want to note that. Okay, student activity fund. This one's a fairly easy one. This is really managed by the schools. I roll it up on a very high level, and I'm just estimating a 10% increase. And then I budget all expenditures for an ending fund balance showing as zero. That never happens in reality, but just it gives them the maximum ability to spend their funding without doing any sort of a supplemental budget. And one other note is I'll probably be requesting a supplemental budget for the charter schools because they did increase their expenditures during this year. So I just want to make sure that's covered so that their appropriations are included. Okay. And I have one other thing. If you could put up really quick the financial statements and turn to page 4. I just want to show you one thing, just because sometimes when you look at slides, it's different than how it really presents as a financial statement. So I just want to make sure that everybody in the room understands what it looks like and they can ask appropriate questions that way. I like it from a financial statement perspective because that's what I'm used to, but everybody is different in the way that they are, what they're used to seeing and how they learn. Mhm. Thanks, Jonathan. And if you can make it a little bit bigger, thank you very much. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, and if you could move it down just a little bit. Okay. There we go. For the appropriate, yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so this has all of our funds on it. It's on page 4 of our financial statements. There are many pages of financial information. There's some FTE calculations and in there for all funds. There's comparative information on financial statements for all of our funds in here too, that I really encourage you guys to dig into and let me know of any questions. But I just want to note that on the surplus deficit on this, that we're going to be needing to pass a resolution approving the use of the fund balance that is on this page, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what that looks like. So we're going to be needing to do that for the general fund, for the technology mill fund. Let's see, for the early childhood fund, food service. Let me see. Oh, and the housing fund. Yes, housing fund, and then student activity fund. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. I just wanted to make sure to note that specifically. Okay. I'm happy to take questions now.
So that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for bringing that forward. Just a reminder, we started with the retirement incentive plan right up there at the beginning. So board directors, let's start with 2 minutes and then we'll have 5 minutes for open discussion and try to recognize that since we're coming up on the end of some of these big decisions, if we really do need a few extra minutes, we'll make that happen tonight. Director Kuhlenberg, would you like to start?
Sure. I know the retirement incentive fund is a hot topic right now from a budgeting perspective. And I read over kind of the 3 options that were presented and understand that we haven't made progress in pursuing one of those, it sounds like. What do you see as the timeline for us needing to make a decision related to that? And how do you anticipate us kind of engaging in that process, moving that along? We know that sometimes these conversations can take time and we have to give them the time that they need. But I'm wondering if in your mind you have a timeline and an associated process. And I think maybe it's 2-part, like what's the ideal timeline and process, and what do you think the realistic timeline and process is that we're looking at to come to a resolution on that point? Because it doesn't seem like from your explanation and the materials presented that it's something that we can just let lie. Like we need to address it one way or the other.
Yes. Yeah, this is a challenging question and you're really looking at that very delicate balance between employee benefits and what is doable from a financial perspective. And I really, here's the positive thing that I see going on right now. And I'll also, look for Dr. Cole's thoughts as well on this, but that people are staying engaged. Staff is still staying engaged in the process and understands that I believe that a lot of people understand that this needs to be sunset and it's just how to do it and what makes the most sense. From a financial perspective, looking at a large increase in liability and vesting for 26, 27, if nothing is done, that concerns me as your CFO. And one thing that I would say is that if we could find ways to mitigate this liability, in the short term, and then find if we can come up with some solutions over even, a short time frame, whether it be, I mean, the next board meeting would be tough, but looking at either that or early part of next year. That would be the most beneficial time frame for me, because if we start to get in towards the budget season again, then people are gonna just be worried about this again, and they're gonna be hearing this, and there's gonna be no resolution again, and then it's gonna just lead people into the same level of uncertainty that created some issues this year. Does that help answer your question?
It does. So just to restate it, you want to solve this as soon as possible. We don't have another year to have a conversation about this. Is what I'm hearing you say. Is that, we're almost at the end of this year, and this needs to be addressed right off the bat when we get back next year. Okay.
Yeah. And I see some pretty big, as I noted just very briefly on the 27-28 slide, is I see some really big potential looming financial questions on the horizon. It's not to say that they're going to be positive or negative, but uncertainty. And it really could bring this to a head. And I'd rather not wait until it gets to that point to really address this and try to get to some sort of a resolution if, and hopefully move everybody along in a way that is collaborative as well.
And is there any willingness or desire to continue the work over the summer? I know it's really hard to get staff engaged over the summer.
Yeah.
But it seems like
it's really hard to continue that engagement during the summer. I just think that if we don't get to a resolution by June 10th, I think we're going to be somewhat starting over a little bit in August, and then having people get on their feet at the beginning of the school year, and then we're being in the fall. So that's the challenge of the timeline as well.
And just to make sure I'm certain, is my read of the memo correct? It didn't seem from my read of the memo or from what you said tonight that there is like that one of these three paths is the predominant path. There is the preferred path at this point.
There's no preferred path. Those are just some of the things that we've talked about, but there's really nothing that has been that seems to be gaining traction.
Okay.
But I'm really grateful for Chief Brockman's work and doing a lot with the and really trying to engage the employees in a survey to see if there's anything that is trending better as far as some of the options on the levers for this policy, and trying to find a way to sunset it.
Thank you. My time's up. Is my time up?
No.
Oh, I have more.
They
time.
let it run through her
Okay.
responses.
The other thing I was gonna note is just about the board budget, if you'd like me to do that.
Go for it. No, just state it out, throw it out there.
Okay, so in the board budget, I know that we've noted that we have a set aside, which I think I'm trying to find the language again, which I don't remember which document I read it in. But we had a set aside for $40,000 in case we need to engage in a superintendent search. And I think that my recommendation for the board related to that is that we don't pigeonhole ourselves with those dollars to just a superintendent search, but that we broaden the descriptor on that to consulting services. So if the board were in need of other consulting services, they could access those funds for those purposes instead of having to go back and have to figure out where money would come from for those. I was saying when I got on the board didn't have a budget. So this is big strides to have a budget. And I'm just thinking, what have we had to historically use money for? And it's not just a superintendent search, but sometimes there needs to be governance support or communication support or some other type of consulting done for the board. And so I think it would be a smarter move for us to label it in that way, so that we're not having to go outside of our budget or shift budget if we were to need those services.
Thank you. Great. Director Nimmo?
Yeah, I just have kind of helped me with big picture. Okay, so we have these 10 different funds that you've presented. Like, how did we get our budget for them in the first place? Is that a really big question for each one?
How do we explain this? Ask again, if you could.
Well, how did we start out with how did we get these funds to start?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, they're all really based upon, and I think we're going to be doing a deeper dive on the policies for the financial policies over the next year. That's really the intent to do that. So I think that you will see where they lie in I think they're in the policy D. I can double check and get back if you put in a board tracker for me. But that's where I believe that those lie. But then all the funds also are required or recommended by state statute. Some of them are required, like your bond redemption fund. That has to be a bona fide fund that is separated from your general fund. There are some that are recommended to be separated, such as your capital projects fund, but that we by policy do make that change with the early childhood education. There was an addition of that fund a couple of years ago, right before I got here, to make sure for better tracking. So that's another reason why we have some of our funds is just for better tracking, to make sure that we do a better job of understanding what our preschool expenditures are and our revenues coming in. So there's lots of different purposes and legal requirements or lack of legal requirements and just tracking. That is the purpose for each individual fund. Does that help?
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah. I'll just explain some things. What does that mean? You said the general fund draft budget on a recurring basis is close to balanced at 5.
Yes.
Tell me what does that mean? That it's like close to balanced on the recurring?
Yeah, no, that's really great. So when you have $100 million budget, it's really, unless you're, tying to a number and then just putting money in your budget that you're pigeonholing, it's not going to exactly balance. It's really based upon everything that all of your inputs and outputs and what the ending number is. And of $100 million budget, I would call a $5,900 deficit immaterial, what I would deem as immaterial. That means that it's so close to balanced that it's not worth worrying about. I would still call it a balanced budget. Does that?
It does. It still blows my mind. If you need that $5,936, where will we get it from?
No. Well, what happens is there's a lot of fluctuation within your budget. I mean, what you try to do is a lot of your budget is based upon estimations. For example, who you're going to hire. So hiring one person versus another person, just one person can cost a difference of $10,000 to $20,000. So that's where you see a lot of fluctuation in your budget. I mean, looking at interest earnings, if your interest earnings, let's just say, I think I put in Friday board update that inflation is increasing so that our rates are going to increase. And so those types of changes really can have a pretty significant impact on where your budget lands compared to where it's budgets. And those are the kind of estimations that I'm speaking of. It's hard to estimate things.
Does not work well with this, but I really, really appreciate it. So there was something in here. So you had said something about something about the rental income and salaries, and it made me think, so when the salaries of our staff go up and they're in our rentals, our rental income goes up because it's based on income.
That's correct.
It's that closely tied, I guess, to income.
That's correct.
Oh, I hadn't thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Director Ramirez.
Thanks. I don't really have any questions because we sort of went through most of these during finance. I did just want to sort of make a comment because in looking at Director Tracker requests regarding the pass-through numbers that we looked at last board meeting. I just wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit on the fund balance, the one-time monies, the 270 that we're using from the FRC for the retirement incentive plan overages. What other fund balance are we using money from for the retirement incentive?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So there is 270,000 because usually with the FRC, we provide a $470,000 transfer for our family liaison positions at the schools. And they are using fund balance one time totaling 270,000 based upon their available fund balance. So that is where that funding is coming from. And the remainder of that difference between the 367 and that 270 is really because that is part of the decline that we're anticipating to see for 27, 28 from our decline in enrollment, because our enrollment decline is continuing because of the ghost kids of our revenue. Do you know what I'm referring to with the state's revenue, and that we're funded additional students? And as our enrollment continues to drop, then that funding drops off, even if our enrollment stays the same.
So are we saying then that 27, 28 numbers for some of our programs that we do pass through funding will decline?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that because I wanted to elevate, and we've had this conversation before about looking at our budget with economies of scale. And so I do think it's important for us to continue to have that conversation as we're looking at our budget, not just for this 26, 27 school year, but moving forward, making sure that we're looking at all of our accounts that we are, finally getting access to and being able to review with enough time to make sure that we are really thinking through what our school district looks like today, as opposed to how we were funding it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, because things have changed drastically. I appreciated Director Kuhlenberg lifting up the timeline for the retirement incentive plan. I think obviously we've had this as a board, this conversation has come before us, and especially in finance committee has come before us as a grave concern on how much money that we are utilizing in this fund. So I would just echo sort of that push to the team to try to have that conversation and set a timeline and expectations on when that deadline is to make a decision, so that we don't find ourselves next year trying to scramble and then looking at pushing it back another year because we can't make a decision. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to echo Director Kuhlenberg's note about changing the framing around the 40,000 in the board budget. I think that the broader use of it for consultants' fees, I don't know how we make that adjustment, but I think that's the appropriate framing for it. So it's a little more flexible. And then I appreciated the work that the staff has done to bring the retirement incentive back to teacher groups. I know that intentional time and effort's been put into that, but we do hear loud and clear that moving forward, that kind of volatility is not sustainable in our budget. And so the options that you've listed, I'm glad they're being considered. I'm glad we're polling staff. Can I just ask, is that the entire staff, or is there a limit on years of service or RFCEA participation on who's receiving that survey?
Is it everybody or how? IBB
reps. Okay.
IBB reps. Yeah.
And when will you guys have info about that from the survey? When are they supposed to get back to you? Okay. Well, thank you for that work, and we do look forward to hearing that final proposal from staff. All right, the budget narrative, as always, is such a great start and such a helpful overview, noting it for the public record and for any staff of the district looking in that just want to know what decisions we're making. The writing there is accessible, it's helpful, it is draft, it's a working document still, but as we move forward, I know that that's a really helpful reference point for me. I just wanted to name it for those listening or anyone interested in sort of jumping in but not sure where to start. That's a push that this board has made over the last few years, and staff has definitely delivered. So thank you all very much for that. We'll now open it for 5 minutes of board discussion if there are further comments or questions on any of these issues.
I would like just like a general
understanding of what stopping the early retirement incentive means, like in real life for some of our staff. Is that?
That's a really great question. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, but I wonder if Chief Brotman, you have anything to add? I mean, I would name that especially for staff that are between 2 and 4 years of retirement, this is on their radar. And this is something that has been calculated into folks' retirement plans, college saving, paying off college payment plans. A lot of staff have been really working, our staff are very thoughtful about their retirement, how to best leverage para and maximize their highest average salary. We see people being very thoughtful and some folks, especially in that like 3 to 5 years out of trying to really work through their retirement options. So this definitely plays in, but I wonder if Chief Brotman, and I appreciate the question because I think this is what we're trying to thread is the incredible financial volatility of this incentive, the realization that this is not, it's not, we struggle to find a comparable district that does these anymore. It doesn't have the benefits that it used to when it started for the reasons Chief Chicoine brought up. And on the other hand, the impacts on some of our staff are pretty significant. And again, I'll kick it to Chief Brotman, but I also want to name that we have heard it's quiet, but there are also staff who are saying, those dollars should be in everybody's salaries right now. That the fact that we're giving them to people to leave is also hurting people who are here now and might not be here in 20 and 30. So it's complicated, but I appreciate the sensitivity of the question.
I think that Dr. Cole explained the issue well. We definitely have some longtime employees who have been here for decades, and receiving this retirement incentive has been part of their retirement planning for many years. And it's interesting when you talk to them and they say, this is my plan, look at my spreadsheet, this is going to be my highest average salary. When I get this money from you at the end, that's what's going to pay for my child's last year of college. Like they have a whole story and a narrative made up about what this money means to them. They have known about it for decades and they are counting on it. And I have appreciation for engagement from staff members across their careers. We have someone who's been working with us really regularly. It is their 6th year in the district. They're in a very different place in their career. They are also engaged in it and looking at it. The whole group is trying to look at it through the lens of how can we both sunset this program and not cause undue harm on our colleagues. And that is not an easy thing to do, but that's part of the effect that it could have on people.
So we're not still signing people up for it. Is that the right way to say it? Like, are we still adding? I mean, it's a benefit, so everybody gets it no matter what, or have we come to a place
It's a
where
benefit and people are eligible for it, and that
there, I should look at it.
Yeah,
That
the
is
document
part
link
of
that
the-
like describes the whole process, the form that they fill out if they're intending to access this benefit.
And we're still letting people sign
we
up.
are.
It's like the document was just updated in May 2025, I think. The date that it was last.
When did we
updated.
start it? Do you know? Or it would tell me in.
It was started, I think, in the late 90s.
Wow. Okay.
And it was a program that used to be a financial benefit to the district. It was introduced during a time of another time of like really hard financial period. But there were just some different things happening with our budget that made it easier to implement. It used to be a money maker, and then for a long time it was considered sort of budget neutral. But as we've made work on staff salaries and we have allowed people in critical shortage positions, teachers, bus drivers, cooks to retire and then continue working for us in a critical shortage designation, what used to be called the turnover credit, which means like a highly paid teacher compared to a rookie teacher, that used to sort of fund the program, and that those conditions don't all currently exist.
And our goal is to get to where we're not paying out any of this.
I think our goal is to really invest our dollars in a way to like recruit and retain high quality staff. And I've been using this analogy that we're like the people at the supermarket who have too many groceries and not enough money, and we need to put something back. So I don't think our goal is to take away the benefit from anyone, but we
from a financial
we have too many groceries on
to
them.
be something.
Conveyor belt.
And Chief Brockman, maybe you can talk to, I think some of the strategies have involved the idea that if we invest some of the money into salaries and that higher soon to retire quadrant, they receive a higher benefit in their retirement, and that money is much more predictable. And this volatility of this lump sum is what we're trying to get away from, I think. Obviously, those are really sensitive talks. I don't want to barge in if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we're still trying to invest in those staff that are approaching that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, Director DeFreitas. We really are looking at it because the retirement incentive, it is a bonus. It does not factor into your highest average salary or your lifetime retirement income if you make it to retirement. And so if we could be really strategic about investing dollars into salary schedules, it would mean more lifetime income for our retirees. It's just the bumpy transition that we have to get through.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Jonathan, can you put another 3 minutes on, please? Are there other questions, comments, concerns?
Chief Jaquin, can you please elevate the housing fund conversation, including the superintendent house income and the wash that we have from the housing fund?
Yes, so the superintendent house is currently a part of the housing fund stock. And there is rental income that's received from the superintendent house that is currently going into that housing fund to help shore that housing fund up currently. And there are a few expenditures for that superintendent house included in there also. However, it is more than paying for itself through that fund right now, through like how it's being maintained. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And can you talk about staff housing and those expenditures and money coming back into the housing fund?
Yeah. So generally it's a fairly tight fund. And what the reason why I say that is what Director Nemo was talking about a little bit earlier with having very little to no increases in people's salaries over the last couple of years has led to very low increases in rental revenue. And we still have inflationary pressures on the fund, but it still, is keeping up with that somewhat at 150,000 on a cash basis surplus to help with some maintenance over the future in that housing fund. There is 1.3 million in depreciation, which is a fairly good measure of what you can anticipate that the district will have to put into that fund eventually over time to make sure that all of those units stay up to snuff. But they're still relatively new units right now. So I think the fund is doing fairly well at 1.2 million in fund balance, excluding the capital assets net of related depreciation.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. All right, so timeline reminder, we are seeing the second read of the full budget and taking action on it on our June 10th meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's correct. And then also what I'm hearing from the board is to bring back some recommendations or where we're at with another update on the retirement incentive. Is that correct?
I would take Dr. Cole's direction on whether we expect to take action on that or not, but there may be some on the 10th. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a progress report for sure. We'd love to be able to get to an action as soon as possible. And again, are going to try to thread this piece of trying to continue to work with staff on collaborative solutions, continue to work with a sense of urgency, being mindful of the loss of summertime and traction and momentum. And so I think if the board's comfortable, let's shoot for progress update and a progress report. And if anything shifts in the next week or so and we can do more and come with a proposal and a plan, then we'll do so. Does that?
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me is like if we could come with a proposal that even takes 1 point from the survey that we could move forward. Such as if we could look to freeze salaries at the 26-27 pre-mill levy rate so that the liability is mitigated for the future, that would be very helpful.
Does that make sense? So if yes, thank you. If there are some, and Chief Chicoine spoke about this earlier, if there are some kind of short-term mitigation strategies that we feel like we've got some consensus built around and folks can get on board with, we'll bring those to the board for recommendations. Maybe it doesn't solve the big sticky issue, but might slow things down a bit.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
That's correct. I mean, I think that the piece, the interesting time that we're in right now is looking at if we were to go for a mill levy, that would bump people's salaries to help offset any loss from this policy. So we're in this interesting timeframes that I would not want to miss all of that ability and then just to mitigate that liability. Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification. Sure.
We have finance committee on the 8th is that our last finance committee as a team before the board meeting?
Yes.
I would just push our team if possible. I'm not sure what the presentation is that day, but to move it up a week. I think it would give us enough time to get back to you if we had any questions instead of doing it the Monday before the board meeting.
Oh, okay. So you'd like to move that to the finance committee meeting? Is that what I'm hearing?
The first in the afternoon works for my calendar. I don't know for the rest of the board, but I just want to make sure to flag that for the team so that we're able to go through and give you any questions before that June 10th meeting.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point.
I would not be able to make it on the 8th and I was hoping to come to, or I would not be able to make it on the 1st and I was hoping to come to that one. There's also a labor management committee at 4 on June 1st. I don't know if we can hold the 8th, if that timeline works, if you get substantive feedback from the board or if there's another time that week, but bumping it up a week, I'm not sure we can.
Okay. Yeah, whatever works for you guys, I will really work my hardest to make work for me. How does that sound?
I think the other thing that, Chief Chicoine and I were talking about today is that if the board does have questions that are more than clarifying or, explanatory questions, which I think are great and really important for our board and community, but perhaps more substantive things that might need some more work on Chief Chicoine's half, if we could get those into a board tracker by the end of this week, we can try to turn them around a little more quickly so that by the 8th of the finance committee meeting, we can talk through it. Because remember, we were looking at that and saying we're not going to be able to move that meeting on the 8th up because of LMC on the 1st. But if the board did feel like, ooh, this feels really sticky to me and I'm going to need more of a dive on it and we could get that on the radar, then I can work with Director DeFreitas if we do need to add more time, if we need to dedicate more time in a work session on the 10th. If we have a better sense by the end of this week of what's still feels sticky, that would help.
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, there is no other day from June 1st to 5th that you guys are available for a finance committee meeting?
I am not.
Okay.
We have policy committee, we have labor management, we have an MLO committee that week at that 4 o'clock time. I mean, we could.
That's a good point.
That's a good question. That might work the 2nd. And maybe that's an add, not a get rid of the 8th, but maybe it's an add. Maybe Director DeFreitas, maybe that's something you and I could talk about more offline.
Yeah, we can try. I think I hear what you're saying. I think though, if we're not going to see in the 8th in the finance committee any substantive shifts, do we can we gather those stickier concerns, the larger issues and get them to staff? Or
So I think.
because we can do it on the 2nd maybe. But I'm wondering, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I guess what I'm confused is if we're waiting until the 8th, which is the Wednesday before the board meeting, then you guys are gonna have 2 days. Like, if I go to finance
It's
at
kind of
4,
wonky.
then you guys are gonna have 1 day to get answers. So it doesn't make sense to me and timeline wise because our board meeting is on Wednesday. So it just, to me, it's like, it, especially since this is the one that we're voting on, I would hate for us to have to push back the budget because we have unanswered questions.
Well, okay, so I've got to check in with Anna and Catherine tomorrow. Let's look at trying to find if the second will work, to give staff more time, swapping policy committee, but we can talk calendar tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll need to know if more than 2 board members plan to attend on the 2nd as well, because right now I have the 8th noticed because I was told more than 2 board members might attend, so I may need to do the same on the 2nd. So just let me know.
Okay. All right, it's on our list for tomorrow's conversation. Okay, anything else on that? Next business in order? Excellent. Lost my place again. All right. The next item, next business in order is the approval of the 26-27 salary schedules. Do I have a motion to approve the 26-27 salary schedules?
I move that the board approve the 26-27 salary schedules as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We now have 2 minutes of discussion for each board member and 5 minutes of open discussion. Director Nimmo, did you want to begin?
I don't have anything. I've read through it and I'm paying attention, but at this point, I don't have any input or questions.
Thank you. Director Ramirez?
Thanks, team. We went over this in finance committee. Chief Chicoine, would you like to uplift anything on this to make sure that the general public knows and is aware of?
There's a couple things to lift up on this is that number one is that this is really intended to be a very transparent look at all of the changes in salary schedules for the board, so that I was really grateful for the work of our payroll manager, Michelle Gray, that she had looked at all these and she's fairly new in her position and getting really familiar with that, which was really helpful for both her and I to really review these in detail together. The other thing I was going to note too is that there aren't really very many salary schedule increases starting at 26-27. Most of the 1.1 million is going to be added to salary schedules, probably in conjunction with the mill levy override. We just have the increases from the early childhood education group leader qualified, as well positions because moving those to comps, as well as transportation and move those to comps, and that is a budget neutral decision for transportation based upon some highly compensated positions that are transitioning. So we're able to just reuse that money to try to help recruit and retain drivers based on comps. The other thing I was going to lift up to is because we are holding, partially because we're holding some of that 1.1 million and partially because we're still not adding enough to our salary schedules, we are not keeping up with inflationary increases on our salary schedules. If you look at Denver Boulder CPI, we have a 4.2% increase from March 25 to March of 26. That's just 1 year. And then another 2%, 1.9% for the prior year. And we have frozen the salary schedules pretty much for 2 years, like Certified has not seen increases for that 2 years, and most classified salary schedules as well. And so that's looking at about a 6% increase over 2 years. And the 1.1 million is averaging roughly about almost 2%. So just a note there. And the remainder of there's a lot of more minor movements. That's just a high level summary unless somebody wants to talk about anything in additional detail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Kuhlenberg?
I don't have anything on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the work on this and the IBB efforts that brought it to this point. And Christy, thanks for elevating that inflation hit. It's brutal. It's really hard to hear that, especially with all the work that went into this and the efforts that the district is doing to be fiscally responsible from a 30,000 foot view, and the hits just keep coming. So I appreciate this effort. And we have a motion currently on the floor to approve. Are there any intervening motions to amend? Seeing none, can you call the vote, please?
Director DeFreitas,
Aye.
Director Kuhlenberg,
Aye.
Director Nimmo,
Aye.
Director Ramirez.
Aye.
Thank you. The next business in order is discussion on new policies, IHBB, BDE, and BDI. With those repeals in there as well. Let's see, Director Ramirez, I think you're up first.
I don't have any suggestions.
Director Kuhlenberg?
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to remember if there's anything that I wanted to highlight from policy committee. Are we approving these tonight, or this is just first?
Nope, it's second of 3 reads because they're new.
Great.
They'll be in the consent agenda next meeting.
I don't think I have anything for tonight. I'm also hitting my mental wall because it's after 9 o'clock.
There it is.
Sorry.
Director Nimmo?
I don't either.
Just noting the appreciation of the board bringing forward policies to codify the standing committees, which have done so much good for transparency and engagement at different levels, and then also the board member professional development, very thoughtful. A challenge to all of us, myself included, to do better in these areas. And I appreciate the way that this board goes about finding the proper levers of governance to implement these. I don't have any additional comments either. Again, it is after 9. So
I think this also illuminates that June 2nd policy committee meeting is probably not needed. Because nothing is sent back to that committee.
unless Catherine gets caffeinated tomorrow.
The only thing I would note on these is I know we had earlier discussion about the level of detail in BDE and BDI, and if some of that detail is better served in a regulation, like we have with like our public comment policy and regulation. So is some of this better held in a regulation versus a policy? And I've not gone through it to make that determination, but that's the only comment that I can remember about these two.
What would go in a regulation?
I don't know. I didn't get that far. So
I think since this is something that the board is implementing, it doesn't make sense to put it into a regulation. Regulation is, in my opinion, more so for staff and what they are, how they are implementing.
that's what we do with our public participation policy, our board policy on public participation. Our policy says we allow public comment, and then we have a regulation that we can shift and adjust as needed. So.
Are we gonna be, you think we're gonna be shifting and adjusting those as needed?
I don't know. Said I haven't gotten that far into it. I just remember a comment about the length and detail that they went into and me saying that we could consider putting some of it in regulation. That's all I remember.
Would some of it be appropriate in the board norms, drilling down at that granular level instead of regulation, if it doesn't feel appropriate to have a regulation attached?
Board norms are not policy. Board norms are just every board chair can come in and change board norms.
Yeah.
Yeah, understood. But regulation is a pretty quick change as well, but it does require, I guess, the board approval, so that makes sense.
I mean, I'm
I know
happy
it
to
just-
look at it.
Yeah, I think that that's for if we want to have, no, I don't have it in me tonight to do it,
Okay.
but I will keep these tabs open and look at them.
Can you let us know in our check-in tomorrow if you
Yeah.
want to bring them back around?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Next business in order is future agenda topics, board tracker requests. Director Ramirez has 2 minutes to cover board tracker requests submitted about policies DB and DBE.
This is just from Finance Committee. I think this board has obviously heard it before that we have had conversations about I already forgot. Yeah, please.
This, you saw it with Chief Chicoine talking about the S&P rating downgrading. Finance Committee was wondering if whether we needed to relook at, as a board, our 10% fund balance, given the impacts, unintended impacts that has had on our S&P rating. So I think, if I remember correctly, and then Director Ramirez, I'll kick it back to you. The recommendation from Finance Committee was to bring it back to the board and say, hey, what do you think about us putting DB and DBE on the policy list for 26, 27, when staff can do a dive and look at what other districts do a little bit of research, given kind of where we are right now. Does that sound right, Director Ramirez?
So I have a running, oh, sorry.
No.
I can let other directors comment first.
Oh, go ahead.
A running list of policies that we need to pick up right at the beginning of next year. And I would add that there. Does that feel appropriate?
It's not DBE, I'm sorry.
It's just DB.
It's DB.
Okay.
No. Didn't we pull up another policy though? There was another one, DB and DB. Oh, okay, it was just DB, okay.
And I'm in the process of developing the schedule for next year, so let me know when you have that list.
I've only added a few to it this week.
Okay.
Yeah, we should connect. We have that on our call as well. Many things to talk about. Thank you.
DB, just DB.
And that's following staff-led investigation into the timeline of gathering that. Is that correct?
Sure.
Information comparables,
Yes.
best practices, exploring it.
Just the way we bring things to policy committee.
Yep.
It would come back to you going, hey, we did a little bit of research. This is what we're thinking based on concerns. Finance Committee lifted up. Think of the slide Chief Chicoine presented to you tonight on S&P fund balance, and just kind of reconsidering. And, you know, when we get into it, I could see us actually bringing it to Finance Committee first, then to Policy Committee, then through our normal process, just because Finance Committee kind of is the group that started with it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anything else on that tracker request? Thank you. All right, so the next business in order is board updates and appreciations. We're gonna start with Director Kuhlenberg so that she can go to sleep.
Yeah, I need to. Updates. I don't know, we did all the policy. I don't think I have other board related work updates other than we're almost through the school year. Hip hip hooray. For appreciations, Dr. Park just walked out of the room, but continuing the appreciation for her, as well as all school staff in these last 2 weeks. I got a lovely message from one of my child's teachers last week about the energy that comes along with the end of the year, and remembering that these kids are still in school and these teachers are still trying to teach them through the end and also manage all the fun activities to make this a memorable time. So just an appreciation for all of the hard work that is put into these last few weeks, and especially to our PE staff who is putting together field days and lots of fun activities right now for the kiddos. So yeah, that's all I got. Falling off a cliff here. Sorry, guys.
Director Nimmo?
I got to sit in on my first BOCES meeting and I got really lucky and it only lasted like 45 minutes or half an hour. I don't really mean that. I look forward to full meetings, but it was cool just to kind of meet the group and see them interact a little bit. And I learned a little bit about what they do. I would like to sit in on the finance committee since After is on there, Director After, and she's not here anymore. Yeah, and DAC is done, so you guys all know that. And what were we I just am grateful for the Carbondale schools. You guys know I work part-time at the library, and we reached out to all the different schools and asked if we could come and talk about the summer reading program and try to encourage kids to come and join our summer reading program and get prizes. And a lot of the teachers and schools, are, responded. And so we've been popping into all of the Carbondale schools and talking about summer reading. And I just appreciate the teachers in schools supporting them.
Excellent. Director Ramirez?
Just want to give, wait, Chief Chacoin, don't you leave too. I'm like, everybody's leaving. I wanted, first, before you leave, I wanted to give appreciation for Chief Chacoin this week. We had Finance Committee last week, and, Finance Committee is interesting because I think, we have the ability and the flexibility to talk through a lot of different things and a lot of different topics. And Chief Chacoin and I had a conversation about an item, and she was very quick to clarify what her intention was and ask for clarification on my intention. And I really appreciated that because I think that shows a lot of conviction of moral character, integrity. I appreciated your ability to say, wait, I want to make sure you're understanding what I'm trying to do. So thank you for that.
Thanks for all your good questions. I appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Park, thank you for all of the time. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I've appreciated so much to have you in our DO, part of our team, being able to learn from you, being able to watch you, being able to just be a part, know you were there has meant a lot to me as a board member, as a parent. I've really appreciated your dedication, all of the work that you have committed, all of the fights you've given just to make an impact at the Roaring Fork School District. And I am forever grateful. Thank you for that. I wanted to just mention, we did have our Universal Library Card meeting on the 20th. We're following up back in June. Lots of conversations regarding implementation, but I'm excited that seems to be moving along. I was also invited to participate in the Cougar Cinema last week on Thursday. Thank you to the Glenwood Springs Middle School team for inviting me and to Ms. Parra for extending that invitation. It was wonderful to see the kiddos work and to see the movies and to get to participate. So thank you to that team. I also got to participate on the GSCS passages on Friday and got to see my niece actually do her own passage. And it was always such a great experience. And I'm always so grateful that we get invited to participate in these end of year activities at our schools to see not only student growth, but to see the impact of the school culture, of belonging, of all of the different things that take place. So thank you to both the middle school Cougars and the Glenwood Springs Grizzly Bears. And that's it. Thanks, team.
I just wanted to appreciate the members of the public who submitted applications for the vacant board seat. We had 4 qualified applicants today that the board interviewed during work session. And I think that was a really encouraging way to spend an hour just seeing 4 people who are ready to show up and serve from their own unique capacities. And I'm grateful that our community has that. It is nice to skip the campaign. I can appreciate that you get a different kind of engagement from people. There's a kind of person who can make it through a campaign, and there's a kind of person who still has all the qualifications and is ready to serve. But that is a steep hill to climb right off the bat if you're showing interest here. And so I appreciated that and the time that the board took to have a conversation with them as well. That's available. That was recorded and it's on our website, on our YouTube channel if people are interested. Also, the board will have a special session at 10 a.m. on June 4th, a virtual one, to have any final deliberations and make our decision on that appointment. So I appreciate the flexibility of schedules there as well to work around some things that have been shifting very quickly here at the end of the year. I know it's a big lift for staff and board members to find time to talk about all of this. So I appreciate that a lot. I also got to go to CMS. I appreciated Michael Logan's final tour of board members in his leadership role. I'm glad he's sticking around to teach math. I think that's a valuable save for our district to not lose him just yet. That's a really encouraging place to be. I'm a little biased though, so I think that's fair to admit. And then I also got to go to the GSMS Cougar Cinema, my son was doing his second year of the video and had some very dramatic footage to talk about the plastic plagues assailing our oceans. And I appreciate the time the teachers take to teach storytelling and technical skills. There's not an easy task this time of year. I don't really have any other updates. And so if there are no further concerns or business and there's no objection, then this meeting is adjourned. It is 9:20 p.m.